Welcome to the Murphy, Sam, and Jody After the Show podcast. And we always love to hear from you. If you don't follow us on Facebook, go ahead and do that. Search Murphy, Sam, and Jody, and you can send us direct messages that way. And, of course, if you're listening on the iHeartRadio app to this podcast, you can click the little red microphone, talkback mic, and send us a message that way.
I don't even know where to begin with this, but I want to ask you both, have you had the thought yet, based on what happened yesterday, with President Biden, backing out of the election, and then what happened the weekend before where former President Trump, the assassination attempt. Have you guys had the thought about this time that we are living in, that these crazy big things are happening and we are just living right in the middle of it? Have you had that thought yet? I have.
That how significant
history is being made.
Yeah, it's pretty striking. And it's I mean, I know it's coincidental that's been happening over the weekend, but yes.
Yeah, it was like Saturday to Sunday, so it's like a full week, and there's so much that happened in between with the Republican National Convention also in between that. The reason I bring it up is because I had the thought, I wonder if I'll always remember where I was when I got the news. I think I will remember where I was when I got the news about the assassination attempt. I was at dinner with you, Murphy. Yeah. And Murphy got a breaking news alert, and he told me, and I was like, what? And I was having a martini, and I was like, what? And then then yesterday, I was at the grocery store. Yeah. When I got the news about, and honestly, we were sort of expecting some sort of news from the Biden administration.
Waiting, yeah.
But I wasn't thinking about it. I was thinking about buying V8 for Murphy. And I got a text on my phone, and it was from my Uncle Terry. Like, I will always remember that he's the one that sent it. Because of all people, he's just into that. Yeah. He's about it. About what's going on, especially politically.
Yeah. So and by the way, we'll say, and this is not this podcast is not about politics because we don't do politics.
We don't
on
go
the show.
there, but it's just we are living in a time that, and 20 years from now, maybe our kids will be studying about this.
There's a lot that could be shifting in the near future too, because ever since, as long as we've known, there's 9 people on the Supreme Court, or the Electoral College. That's the way to do it.
Sure.
And it's like we're in that period right now where there's talk of, messing with the Supreme Court and getting rid of the Electoral College. So those two things, I think more big is coming too, or at least an attempt to change things up.
And just that it's a rare thing for a president to back out.
Yeah.
It's just a rarity.
Yeah. I think anytime that you have these kind of, especially in today's world with social media, where you have something that's so big, everybody winds up talking about it. That's not there used to be, because when you had 3 networks and a handful of newspapers or whatever it was, the big story was, the big story. But you
only knew so
you were
much.
more connected to only so many things. Whereas today, for something to be, hit the awareness of everybody is
at the
huge.
Same time,
but
but
what you're talking about, anything that when I flash back to what I was doing when 9/11 happened, it's the biggest of the big events like that are shocking, or I guess unexpected. That's really what it is. When something happens that's so big, you do remember where you were.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that it was a shock, yesterday's news. It wasn't really a shock, but it's still historical, is all I'm saying. It's still historical.
The funny thing, thinking about what you said, Murphy, about the networks, it's like, okay, let's say that happened 30 years ago. Well, unless you were sitting in front of the TV when they broke in with the special report.
It's true.
You weren't going to hear it until somebody called you.
Or you got home and you saw the 6 o'clock news.
Or if you were listening to the radio. The TV and the radio both would have been continuous
coverage of it.
Yeah.
What happens today, you mentioned social media, and I just have to say, I mean, maybe 20, 30 years ago, really 30, 40 years ago.
When social media is only really a 2007 to the present proposition.
Correct,
it's
but so big.
Still,
it's not about the time, but about the massive reach of it. But now it's not like you just get essentially the same headline over and over, or the same story, from 3 or 4 different outlets. You get everybody's feelings and opinion on it. And that's where that's why you have a feeling tied to social media, because if you go there for information, what you're getting is feelings. and you're getting opinions often.
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder to sift through social media. Like,
True.
you know, Twitter or X is what I use, you know, to get some headlines, just instant headlines, and then you go look for your information. But everybody's got such an opinion. You can't just get a headline. You have to get a translation in somebody's mind.
You know, younger generation needs to know. You know, if you want just the facts and just the information about what's happened, you need to know where to go to get that.
Wikipedia.
But you know, your neighbor down the street is not is not in a newsroom, and your neighbor down the street doesn't have this source or that source. They have feelings and opinions, and it's different. Yeah, it's different than a news source. Anyway, I just thought it was interesting because yesterday when I was on the way home with the groceries and listening to it, listening to radio, I thought. You know, last week at this time, we were all talking about, you know, President Trump and the assassination attempt, and then President Biden speaking to him about that. And then, you know, just all of that news and the investigation and Secret Service investigation, and the RNC was coming. And then now here we are Sunday again, and it's a completely different thing, but it's just as big. It's big.
And also, too, before we get to the convention in a month, I mean, you know you're going to have people that, it's open again. I'm going to throw my hat back in the ring. The Democratic side.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of governors. They're being talked about right now.
Right.
And they do say is it by Wednesday that there's a Democratic committee that they're going to get together and talk about what's...
to wait 48 hours after he stepped down.
Before those meetings take place to see what their next steps are. Mm-hmm. So there is so much big stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of complex stuff. But I think on the surface of what you were talking about, the history books, this will be something that is studied or talked about, you know, in time is just a really... A pivotal time in our country, and those don't happen all the time.
No, they don't.
You know, thank goodness the assassination attempts and those kind of things don't. I was a kid when President Reagan was shot, and at that time I remember, you know, news and radio were continuously covering it. That might have been the first time there was that sort of live stop the presses. Everybody, all they're going to focus on is this, and the video, because there was video of it was shown over and over and over and and over again. And but I remember I was in my bedroom at home watching that. I remember that clearly. So when something that large happens, yes, you know exactly where you were.
So where were you when you got the news? I was at the grocery store. Well, how did you get the news? Yesterday.
Oh,
Biden.
Yesterday's news. I was walking out of Office Depot.
Sam?
I got some new pens and pads.
I was at home. I had just picked up my phone. It's like, I want to see things new. And it's like, boom, 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 boom.
Okay. Missed any part of the show? Get it all on the Murphy, Sam, and Jodi podcast.